That's what a lot of people hand you on the first day of class, is that huge syllabus. But I didn't know what we were going to do today until yesterday, until last class. And I'm like, okay, today we can do a little bit of this. And actually, watching what you guys were struggling with last time gave me an idea of what to start with today, and then lead into the next bit, which takes us outside and finish. So then it should warm up by then too, by the time we're outside. So, cool. Great questions, great questions. Anybody see the eclipse?
I did.
Yeah, it's pretty rad, huh? I didn't know it was either. I was riding my bike to the pool. I'm like, why is that circular cloud in front of the moon?
Circular cloud.
Why is it still circular?
Wasn't it at 2 a.m.?
But it took me like well, it started at 3, but it was wrapping up by about 5. And I caught the tail end when it was like I think it's called a loon. You got the moon, and then there's this little arc as the shadow was coming off. And it took me 20 minutes. Not when it was too early. I think as it set. Did anybody see it set? The moon set this morning?
I saw it set.
Was it orangish when it hit? It was supposed to be like a blood.
No, but it was this.
It was huge. Yeah, it was one of those big. Yeah, it's great optical illusions. Apparently, the 23rd of this month is another.
Oh.
I didn't know this. I seriously, it took me 20 minutes to realize what I was looking at. Like, wow, circular clouds. Honestly, like seriously, I'm not the brightest
It
bulb.
was actually red. It was a red.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
It was red.
Anyway, so 2030 and another one, and apparently there's a solar one coming. And those are pretty badass when those come out.
Do we get to see those?
The solar one you should, because it should happen during the day. The sun blocks the moon. I think. That's not right. Is that right?
Solar should be the sun gets blocked.
The sun gets blocked by the moon, right? So it does pass in the day. Those are the ones you can't look at because they'll burn your retinas out, right? If you look at those.
If the moon passes over the sun.
It's like one of those things your mom tells you. Don't do that, or you'll
Poke your eye out.
poke your eye out. All fun and games. Somebody looks at a solar eclipse.
Red Ryder gun.
There's math behind that too. I don't think you care to do it. It's a lot of geometry and a lot of.
No, keep us just on.
Well, I mean, there's math. I mean, that's the thing. I was just talking. Tell me your name again.
Pam.
Pam. I was going to call you Amy. Pam. Thank you. Where's Amy? Amy's here, and Amy is. I have 2 Amy's. There's my other Amy. Thank you. The question was about practice problems and kind of how to master the material, which is a fantastic question. As we were talking, many of them were saying, yeah, I got the exact same idea. The beautiful thing about Math 105 is we can latch onto an idea we're interested in and just go with that. Like sometimes we've gone into Powerball and just analyzed Powerball because the Powerball jackpot was like so big at the time class was being held. Like, let's just do that. Let's just go off and play with Powerball. So that might happen again while we're in here. I think the biggest Powerball jackpot is has ever been $600 million or something like that. So if it's something like that, it's pretty big, right? So we could just launch off and go to that if it gets to that again. Who knows if it will or not. But that's kind of the neat thing about 105 is you can chase down those ideas. I have like basic ideas I like to stick with, but then we'll add in things. I was watching students suffer through trying to find something online recently. And then I was like, why don't you just put this word and that word? And they did. And they didn't get enough hits. I'm like, well, take the other word out. And they were like, why does that matter? Taking the other word out. And I realized, I'm like, oh wow, Boolean logic. They don't understand the Boolean logic behind Google searches. Like whenever you're doing any kind of an internet search, and if database searches are the same, you can apply Boolean principles, which is logical principles. George Boole is the guy that kind of coined these terms. And, or, not, else, if only, exclusive, or all these wonderful little things. And they can actually help you find stuff online more efficiently. So that was an idea I had a couple weeks ago, which is why that logic, it's not linked yet, but that logic tab is in the extra resources page now. And if we have time, we'll get to that. So, 105 kind of flows. It kind of flows. I have this idea of what I'd like to do, and there are certain things we seem to always get to time-wise, like grade, which I think you guys have a pretty latched-down understanding of. And the final culmination of it is applying it to stuff. And this is where I like looking around the world and seeing where stuff happens. Grade, your final culmination of grade, we'll be analyzing on the exam, which I'll upload this weekend at some point, and you'll have till week 5 to do. It'll be analyzing my Iowa Street commute. So I strapped a GoPro to my bike and went downhill on Iowa. I almost died actually doing this. Some dude ran a stop sign coming in Palisades, and I was going probably about 35 down. You ever been on Palisades on the Butte? It's a very short road. And it's even steeper than Iowa. You get going like that. I was at the top, and I dropped in, and I was going at least 35, and I looked over, and this guy just didn't bother stopping. And I managed to get around him and swing on to Iowa and show him something. But at any rate, you'll analyze that commute. You'll analyze that commute on your exam. So that's the idea. It builds up to an application. What we're going to do today, the topic today is going to be similar triangles eventually when we get to it. You've already been doing it with grade. That's the idea. It already lacks into what you were doing with grade. And it's going to tie in. I mentioned a rabbit squirrel problem a while ago. I think a couple days ago I mentioned rabbit squirrel and you guys were like, rabbit squirrel. I realized there's a better application. It's putting solar eyebrows on your houses. Does anybody have a house that's passively solar designed? That you know of? Passive solar.
With the windows on the south side.
Yes. You put windows on the south side, windows on the southern exposure. This is looking north, so that's the wrong way, but that's okay. There's plenty of windows on the south side of this building as well. But you put windows on the southern aspect of your house, because in the northern hemisphere, have you ever watched the sun rise in the summer versus the winter? In the summer, it rises very high, very far in the northeast. From Bend, it looks like it's rising over Smith Rock. And then it swings up in this big arc in the south, and then swings down to the northwest. It sets over Mount Jefferson in the the middle of the summer, around was that the equinox or the solstice? June 21st. The solstice? Is that the solstice? I always forget which term. June 21st. Longest day of the year. Boom. And then in the winter, it rises way in the southeast. And it makes the same angle in the sky that it does in the summer. It just starts lower, so it doesn't get as high. So you can adjust for this with your houses. In the wintertime, you want the sunlight to come into your house because it gives you free heat. But in the summertime, you don't, because it gives you free heat. And that's the last thing you want in August is more heat in your house, right? So what you do is you put these, they're called eyebrows, little mini roofs, over those windows that you put on your south sides. So when the sun is high in the sky, the roof blocks the sun. But when the sun drops in the winter, the sun's allowed to come in. And that's all it takes is when you're designing a house or if you're doing a retrofit on a porch or something, is to do the math to figure out how far out that has to sit on your south windows. And you guys now have essentially the tools for it, especially after today, what we do outside today, measuring shadows. Isn't that cool? I mean, you can make, just FYI, our house is heated via natural gas and passive solar. I check our energy bill every year against what Cascade Natural Gas tells me is the average utility bill for natural gas used. Now we also use a dryer occasionally. We hang our laundry usually. But we use a dryer, the dryer is gas, and the oven that we use is also gas. No, I lied to you. The stovetop is gas, the oven's electric. So we use gas minorly for clothes drying and minorly for stovetop, mostly for heating. Our energy bill, year after year after year, is 1/4 of what the average for Bend is. So 25%, and I'm sure Amy, you've probably seen similar things.
Pretty low. Yeah.
Pretty low.
I don't know if it's 25, but it's.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, honestly.
Tile floors, they heat up and then radiate.
That's the other thing too. There's other non-mathematical applications, more physical applications. When we built our house, we buried radiant floor pipes in the floor, which basically are little tiny plastic. Anybody have that in their house? Radiant floor heat? It's wonderful. You get up in the morning and your bare feet and the floors are warm because the solar panels heat the water, which then heats the pipes in the floor. I mean, and this is the thing, if you're building your home from scratch, if you're doing a big retrofit, you can retrofit these things in pretty nicely. When you're building, it's the greatest thing to do. When we moved here, it blew our mind. Like we moved here 12, 13 years ago, and we kept being told, Bend has 300 sunny days a year. Sweet. It's going to be solar houses everywhere. There were 3 on the market. 3. And they were all on the west side buried in pine trees. I'm like, that's A, dumb, and B, dumb. Like, why would you do that? You got a big, huge pine tree. I mean, it's a gorgeous thing. It's going to block the sun in the summer. It's also going to block those wonderful panels you spent 20 grand on and not make any power. So we built our own place, which was much cheaper anyway, and retrofitted the panels as we found funds for it. But it's just amazing to me when you have all these, the student center is a perfect example. I walk in that student center, I'm like, what a waste of resources. Like, the windows all face west. All face west. So you bake in the summer. Anybody been in that room in the summer? You bake. They lower the shades down. And in the winter, the sun's not coming through those windows because the sun sets too far in the west.
It's all aesthetics.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of what governs architecture a lot. Have you ever noticed where the south windows are in that building? On the campus center? It's a trick question. There aren't any. There are 0. It's got a very small southern exposure. It's about this wide, actually. That building's like 3 miles long and about 10 feet wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. It's also just environmentally kind of like silly the way they set it up. So, anyway, blah, blah, blah. The topic of today that we'll eventually get to and culminate by going outside and measuring some trees without having to climb the trees, unless you want to. Brought the 200-foot tape if you guys want to. Depends, bring ropes. Well, is the same math you'll use for figuring out that eyebrow on the houses. And I'll have all those questions, hopefully, I'm hoping by Saturday afternoon I'll have all those exams uploaded for you so you can have a couple, 3 weeks to knock them out. So I'm trying to take as much pressure off that assessment, that idea of sitting in a classroom taking a midterm. I hate that. I hate watching students have to do that. I mean, I know you hate it too. So you have all the time you need. FYI, speaking of all the help you need, somebody in my 243 class made a Facebook page for the 243 classes, which I thought was genius. Absolutely genius. It already has like 15 people joined in the group. They're asking questions. If somebody here wants to do it, I'm totally okay with that. Absolutely. Just invite me so I can drop in too, because I've already dropped in on the 243 page a couple times. So that's another resource I hadn't thought about because I'm an old man. But it's a fantastic resource. You know, have a 105 group and you guys find each other, and that's great. I think it's fantastic. I'll tell all my classes about it. 244, 240. Well, 243 knows because they already set it up. But I guess that's it. How are the quizzes? We had 2 of them for this week. Yeah, yeah. Not a peep. Please.
All right, that could be incorrect, but I checked some